and you'll get a little blip. I wish I knew exactly what to expect tonight. I'm expecting a miracle. The end goal is not this program in discussion tonight. The end goal is to create a small set of what I call video vignettes that can be put on our website or anybody's websites, that could be published in Chip Chats or published in Wood Carving Illustrated, that instructors and students can look at to say, if they are doing this kind of carving, take 5 minutes and look at this stuff as a prep step prior to taking a class. And then hopefully instructors will reinforce those lessons so that we can try to minimize the possibility of injuries. And we'll walk through some of that. I'm going to share my screen. I got some PowerPoint slides. I'm going to try to go through these really quickly. We have a lot going on. It's just really amazes me even that our little club has a lot going on. I'll encourage you, there will be questions. So when you're muted during sort of part of the discussion, you can post things in chat. You can post questions in chat. You can post your insights in chat. But I really want this to be a conversation. So when we get into this, particularly in Q&A, when Kelly talks and Nancy talks and Scott talks, I would like to have it be Q&A with a group of roughly 25 people. So just be aware of that. And then we record these, we post them on the website a couple of days later, and you can watch them to your heart's content. I got a whole series of announcements. The Carving Special Interest Group is a evening group and a daytime group. The evening group meets the third Thursdays at the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers for a couple of hours, 7 to 9, optionally 6 to 7. And it's the first time that we've been able to do face-to-face, in-person carving. So someday we might get to weekly carving, but right now it's monthly, and we're going to focus on sharpening. We did last month, but we'll probably the next month or two. Corey Levine, who is in the group today, will focus on his experience with the work sharp at both of those meetings. The fourth daytime meeting, the fourth week Thursday, is at Woodcraft. You got to register because we can only have about 10 to 12 people in the facilities.
Judy Nehemiah.
I'll talk to Julie. She might not be able to get in.
Hi.
The Adam McIsaac workshop on Columbia River coastal carving is full. So we had an interest list of about 27 people. I metered out the registrations, first come, first serve, and it filled up really quite quickly. We're hoping to do a second version of that in Q1. But this one is really quite exciting, and we'll, I think, start scratching our itch about Northwest Coastal Indian carving stuff. Masa Natani is known by some of us. Masa is, I would consider, an expert Japanese wood carver and woodworker. He says, I'm a woodworker. I carve. I learned carving when I was 17 years old in Sapporo. He's a member of the Ainu, which is the indigenous population of northern Japan. He taught for us prior to the pandemic, and we're doing two things with him, and Tom Rich is the coordinator for both of them. The November monthly program is going to be featuring Masa. We'll probably do it 6:30 to 9 because he has a lot to cover. We're going to cover, he'll do a demonstration. It'll be live at the Guild studio in Multnomah Village, if you're a member of the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers, but most people will join online. He does texturing. He carves, he's famous for carving Ainu bears. He's carved a couple hundred of those. It's a lot of work. He creates vessels out of leftover stuff. He's got special tool handles that allow him to do a lot of repetitive stuff. His sharpening is unique and his experience is unique. So I think that'll be quite an interesting program. Our main goal is to actually video record it, not just record the Zoom program, but actually videotape the whole thing so that people in other classes.
She needs the link.
Hmm.
She needs the link.
Can you forward the email that I sent to you to her? That'll have the link in it.
I will do that.
The second one is that for those of us that took his class before, we're going to do an experiential workshop with him. We call it Bring Your Own Wood. When he looks at wood, he reads the wood and basically comes up with ideas on what it should be. So rather than doing a programmatic class and making the same thing, we're going to encourage you to bring your own challenging wood. And he will look at it, you will look at it, others in the class will work at it. We'll work on it for 2 sessions, about 10 days apart, and then come back. We haven't announced that yet, but that's going to be coming up. We just got the dates pinned down today with the studio. Monica Setzel Phillips is the adult daughter of Leroy Setzel, who is considered to be the most famous carver in Oregon history. He passed away about 20 some years ago. Monica carves in his style and also weaves. And she's been teaching at Sitka on the coast for decades. And so she's going to do a mini version of that Sitka workshop for us in Kelly Stadelman's studio. Thank you, Kelly, for doing that. And it'll be in early, be on a Saturday and a Sunday on probably the 11th and 12th of March. I'm pretty sure it'll be oversubscribed. We'll put an interest list out, which is our mechanism that if you have an interest in taking that class, put yourself on the interest list. Those that are on first opportunity to do it. Jim Bergeron is been doing coastal Indian carving, lives near Astoria. We met him, some of us met him at the Columbia Flyway show. He did a fabulous video on making your own ads out of a file and making your own handles, and both a shaping ads and a texturing ads. And it's an amazing guy. I met with him yesterday, and he is willing to do that. We'll do a low cost, probably a $5 or $10 90-minute seminar for those of you that have an interest in coastal Indian carving. He's 82, a little bit not inclined to want to do much teaching, so I don't know if that'll ever be possible, but at least there'll be an introduction. That is the end of my announcements for what the Carving Club is doing. There will be no program in December. It's just too crazy for everybody. So this is a safety discussion, and in some sense, that's an easy topic, but the fringes of it are not. And so I kind of thought about what I would consider truisms that we probably don't have to discuss, which is one of them, I think, are cuts and accidents are inevitable. Somewhere in your lifetime, you will get cut or have an accident. You'll get a surprise. We might just call it a surprise, but something will happen. But how often and how severe they are, we can control. We can reduce the frequency and the severity of them by our own behavior, which is a corollary that says the prevention is the best cure. And so we don't have to talk about first aid. The first aid is actually trying to prevent them in the first place. Work holding is a piece of that strategy. So you don't have your hands in front of a sharp object. The thing about attitude is, and I'm guilty of all this stuff, by the way. I mean, the more I thought about this discussion over the last month, the more I realized how unsafe I am. I wrote in this announcement that my 2 challenges are eye protection and clutter. And I got a lot of that and not enough eye protection for some of the things that I do. I take it for granted that my glasses are going to protect me, but they're not Z87s. They'll shatter in my eyeballs. But it's not just about us. Injuring others next to you, injuring our tools, ruining them, ruining the project because our unsafe things are a piece of that. I also thought about, my comments, by the way, are just thought-provoking, intention to kind of think about this. I call level 1, which is the common, that we're all going to get nicked. We're all going to run for the Band-Aid, and it's not going to be serious. And mostly everything, that's what's happened to me. I've never had a level 2. where I've had to take 10 to 15 minutes to stop the bleeding, or I haven't. Anyway, I've not gone there, but others have. I've heard, and I'm sure we'll hear stories tonight of stitches required. You know, that's may not be a hospital visit, but it might be a, you know, emergency care kind of thing. And we actually had one case of surgery required, but the beginner, you know, talk about that earlier. And it was a simple slip of a knife that sliced her little finger. Bleeding was more than usual, but it turned out the next morning she couldn't move her little finger. She had severed a tendon. That was 2 days worth of, 2 days later, it was orthopedic surgery to stitch it back together and 6 weeks of occupational therapy, all because it just slipped out of the sheath. I use this framework in some of the messaging I had, which is it's not just about bleeding. It's not just about cutting yourself. I worry more about eye protection than I do about cutting myself. Maybe I'm paranoid. Breathing dust. Roman Chernikov is on. He'll talk about a bit about that as well. I'm sure Bob. There's those of us that work with dust collection, noisy things, our hearing can get destroyed. It's a cumulative effect. And mallets falling from 3 to 4 feet on your bare toe is not a pleasant experience. So there are these issues with hand carving and power carving. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to call on Kelly first. Just Kelly, I've never actually asked her how many students she's taught. Actually, before I go to Kelly, I'm going to introduce Tim Crawford. Tim, I'll come to you just in a second. But Kelly taught for a long time, more than a decade. And was it 1,000 students? Is that?
I have no idea.
No idea, right? It's uncountable, right? But a lot. And she had a major school. And so she had lots of experience. And Nancy Gerard of Gerard Associates is in the shop. And Nancy has been around, and she teaches a lot of beginning classes. And I asked both of them to just talk about what they do in terms of introducing safety topics, and maybe share some experiences. And Ruth Holland is in the shop as well. Tim, I'll just let yourself. I'll just say that Tim is the head of the board of directors of the National Wood Carving Association. It lives in Ohio. And I've got to know him a bit over the last year, and quite impressed with everything they're doing to rebuild that organization. So Tim, I'll spotlight you, and you have a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Like to just on behalf of the National Wood Carvers, thank everybody for participating in what I think is one of the greatest hobbies that you can enjoy in. And we currently are taking a survey, so you can go to the website chipchats.org and take a survey, or maybe even Larry can send out the link to that survey and that. And we're trying to get feedback not only on our publication, which comes out 4 times a year, but also on wood carving in general, and your feedback from on wood carving and what you like to do and what you like to be more educated in. Would encourage you, if you're not a member, to join. You can join right from the website. And currently it is $20 per year. Needless to say, our membership is a little bit older, and we are looking for new things to do with the National Wood Carvers by not only doing the publication, but also doing webinars as this one, in different avenues that the wood carvers will need. I will put in a plug. We need a board member from the Northwest part of the United States. It only takes basically 1 or 2 meetings a month. And I try to keep the meetings to an hour and get your input. If you've been involved with a nonprofit or if very much interested in wood carving, those are probably the two criteria that we look at. You can even attend for some time period before you even make a commitment. But let me know. Larry has my email, and thank you very much. The time difference between the Akron, Ohio, and the West Coast is a little different, and so I'm a little tired right now. So, but normally I would be heading to bed. So, thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, Tim. We've helped them out in a couple of ways. We helped them with the survey, and then we helped them with their switch conversion to the website. They're now using the same wild apricot technology that we're using with all 3 Portland area clubs, and I think that has gone well for them. We owe debt of gratitude to the volunteers. Kelly, I'll have you, then Nancy, then Scott. We'll kind of do that sequence in terms of free form, whatever you want to share. It's the worst possible setup for asking you, right? But we're amongst friends, right? We are, yeah, it's the formality of all this stuff, but it's we're amongst friends. So your wisdom is, you take it for granted, but we don't. So I'm gonna spotlight you. So your image is gonna pop up. Now you look like you're on a lineup in some prison. No.
Well, I think it all is so important when a beginner comes to your class to have some discussion about everything, that it is potentially you could be seriously injured, especially if you work with your hands, if you're a surgeon or a dental hygienist, where you have to have your hands function. You might want to think about, in getting involved.
So Kelly, let me just do a microphone check. So Roger, can you hear the audio pretty well with him? Can you shake your head?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, thank you. I worry, we think about Zoom being video, but really is audio, right? So
Okay.
that it all depends on this thing is working well.
So, just getting your beginners, students, and I'm assuming that a lot of everyone that's here tonight has taught in.
I would say the group that I know are mostly experienced.
Okay.
There's a few that might not be so, but mostly are intermediate to advanced carvers.
So, just an introduction to tools. This is important to know where the cutting edge is as the non-cutting edge, because you can use that non-cutting edge to guide your tool. Keeping your having usually when I start students, I usually have them do one particular project, and we take it slow. We go through that project and we talk about all the aspects of carving, the techniques, the tools, safety, how to set yourself up. I basically say, you set your table for dinner. When you sit down to carve, you set your table for carving so that things don't roll off the table. You know where everything is, and it's not cluttered, so you're not distracted. And then learn some techniques, take it slow. And then I usually recommend doing the same project over and over again, instead of just, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to go from, a stick figure to, a great big bear. I would recommend doing to beginners to do the same project numerous times. It might be boring for you, but you're gaining understanding of the grain of the wood, how your tool works within the wood. And then once you feel a little more confident and a little more safe, then go on to a new project. I thought of a bunch of little things that I teach my students. They may, I don't know, what's really interesting to anyone, but when I'm holding, I love to carve in my lap because I like to carve when I'm camping. You know, you can't take all my equipment with me, so it's the least safe way to carve. But I tell my students, if you're doing that, make sure when you're carving that your hands are crossed. So let me grab a wood here. So if you have your piece ready to carve, your holding hand is back here and your carving hand is in front, and you can see how your wrists are crisscrossed. So in grade school, we crisscross applesauce. So crisscross, always have your hands, you know, not like this. That's not crossed. You may think that your hand is out of the way, but it's really easy to slip off the edge and catch your hand. So if you hold back here, you can press onto your leg and work ahead of yourself. I don't know.
So you are your own work holding device, right?
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Now, most of my carving is on a carving arm with mallet tools, either pushing or using a mallet. But I still, you know, will take carving when I go on a little vacation or camping.
And do you wear gloves?
I wear a glove when I'm carving in my lap. If I'm carving up at a carving arm, I feel a glove will slip easily, so I don't. But then I'm not holding my project either.
Do you wear an apron for protection?
Yeah, so I don't get chips on my outfit.
But not for protection. That's just for.
No, fabric isn't going to protect you from cuts in your leg. Leather is not going to protect you. You probably should have a board at least in your lap, or you can make a board to go like this to go onto a table so that one ledge, like this ledge, will hook onto the edge of your table, and this edge will hold your project from slipping away from you. You can see how many times this has been in my classroom used. They're there for the students to just grab and use, and it's just hacked up, and it could have been someone's leg. So that's proof that it works. Yeah, I've had people feel like they're really safe with a leather glove and leather on their lap, but it's just cowskin. It's really easy to cut through. So I always recommend a Kevlar glove and a lap board.
Okay, questions. What is a carving arm?
I have one. I just happen to have one. So this is a carving arm. This is what I have hooked up to my workbench. You can see the holes here. You put a big bolt through that onto your workbench, and then it holds. Let me see here. So this is stationary on your your carving bench, and then you can take a carving screw. I got one of those too. Do they call these piano screws? I'm not sure. It's
Yes,
got
it shows up. It
threads.
shows up fine.
Yeah, okay. So you just you drill a hole in the bottom of your project. Like this. And then just screw this in. And I'm sure most of you probably have one of these. I don't know.
No, I don't assume. I wouldn't.
Okay,
Yeah.
it has a little hole here that you just can tighten this down nice and tight. Screw it nice and tight into your wood. Then you need a washer, a big washer. And then when you're ready to carve, gonna hold this on there. Thanks. And you just slip this, I couldn't have picked a smaller project. You slip this in here with your washer on the bottom. And tighten this down nice and tight. So everything is really firm for you to carve on. Then you can just take your mallet tool and push or mallet carve. It does adjust. And I'll show you that here. There's a place here that can tighten. You can put it in several. You can have it straight out. You can have it about 45 degrees. You can go all the way up like this. It also has a pin. Because, you know, as you're really working on your project, this may slip a little bit. So there's a hole in the carving arm here. You can see right here, and that goes through this piece and the piece that's attached to your table. And you just slip this in the hole, and it goes all the way through, and it gives you a little more stability on locking it in the either this angle or the 45-degree angle. So makes it really firm.
You use this a lot.
I use this a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
So Kelly's got two workbenches in her studio that have four corners, and they have four students per huge, massive block of wood. So a lot of things can go on. Have you ever been injured?
I've got a few scars in my thighs. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever had non-skin injuries of any kind? Eyes or
Yes. Well, no, not my eyes. My joints are old now, and they're showing signs of wear, you know, with arthritis. But you know, I've been really lucky. I've had students that have had to stop because of.
have you ever had
joint
students
injury.
that you had to dismiss because they wouldn't follow instructions?
No, I don't think so. A gentleman that was a student that ended up taking carving from Jeff. Jeff had to dismiss him because of memory loss.
Age-related
Yes.
memory loss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Are there any questions for Kelly that you can ask later? But any questions now? Someone's going to break the ice, right?
Did you want us to use chat?
Yeah, no, you can use voice. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can use voice. You can use either, but this is a moment for voice if you want to.
I was curious, you said you don't use a leather apron. Is that true?
I just use a fabric apron. Yeah, just to protect my clothes from the chips. I don't wear an apron for protection from a carving tool. No, it's just fabric, and leather's just cow skin. So you can cut through those pretty easily.
Okay. I always use a leather apron, but it's more, because I sometimes switch pretty readily between handwork and power work. And I've found a leather apron really helps keep you from winding your clothes up in your power rotary tools and things like that. So
I really don't have much. I have some experience with power carving, but not much.
Yeah.
I do know gloves are kind of a taboo when you're power carving. Is that right?
say again.
That it's important not to wear a glove when you're power carving? Is that right?
Yeah, not on your offhand. You don't want to wear a glove on your offhand because you can wind yourself up pretty easily in the glove as well. And even a leather glove, you can wind yourself up pretty well. a power, like a cuts all burr or something like that will really grab hold of things. So yeah.
Okay, Scott, I'm gonna have you go next so that Nancy and Kelly can switch chairs if you're ready to go. Well, maybe you could just set a context, Scott, about your own carving background, which as I recall is 40 years worth of carving going back to Boy Scouts and leader of the current of the area, the club you're in now.
Sure. My name Scott Lang. I'm actually been carving since I was 11. Bitten by the carving bug in Boy Scouts, and my scout master, who is actually a member of our chapter now. So he's well into his 80s and still carving, and in fact led a carving class for Girl Scouts last weekend at the campground in Morro Bay, and I was grateful for that. He's a wonderful person to have teaching folks how to carve. They carved mushrooms, so that was fun. Anyway, yeah, so I've been carving for over 50 years now. Probably made every mistake in the book you can make. And so I guess most of my perspective comes from the School of Hard Knocks. Also, I was a park ranger for 25 years. And a lot of what I learned safety wise also came from my having to train park rangers in some woodcraft, out making trail things and working on, and using a lot of power equipment and things like that. But most of my hand carving came from just picking stuff up and starting to carve on it. What we do in our chapter, when a new carver comes in, I guess you could say that this is safety in a sense. It's safety for the club. We actually have what do you call it? An indemnity agreement. The first thing we have people sign is an indemnity agreement, meaning that we're going to show you how to carve, but you have to understand that this is a dangerous recreational activity and a little bit of lawyerese in there. And but if you don't want to sign the indemnity agreement, you can watch, but you can't carve. And so, but then we also have available in our club, we buy Kevlar gloves, and we buy thumb guards, and we have carving boards. And so those are all available for free to a member, as many as they need, or if they lose one, we'll give them another one. We buy the gloves online for $2 a piece. They're cutting level 5, which I guess is midway between in the scale of gloves. They don't have the stainless steel in them, but they do have the Kevlar, and they'll slow down a knife. Sometimes they won't stop it completely, but it'll, as we say, it'll attenuate the injury. And we're all going to get red someday, some way. I suppose my worst carving accident happened when I was trying to carve on a maple goose egg, and I'll show you right here. You can't really see it, but right there, running up through here, you have an artery in there. And I was holding this maple egg in my hand, and as you said, that cross thing, that's a really good idea, because I was holding it in my hand. I was trying to make a stop cut, and it slipped off that hard rock maple, and I was wearing a Kevlar and stainless steel carving glove, but it was a very sharp knife. And it cut right through the Kevlar and stainless steel carving glove and nicked my palmar artery. And I looked at it and it squirted me in the face. And so I think that, pay attention, don't try and cut towards your hand. And that's one of our basic lessons that we give folks. And also, making stop cuts and going toward the stop cut and applying just enough pressure to get to the stop cut. And then also pairing cuts are done away from you. You can do a pairing cut, but you should be wearing a thumb guard if you're wearing, doing a pairing cut. Let's see, what other things have we got? Just blade handling safety. I encourage everyone to make a scabbard for their blade so that, when you're not using it, you can put a scabbard on it. And I decorate mine up. I make them out of balsa wood, and I've got birds' heads and dragon heads and all sorts of things that I'll make them fun so that people, I'll put it back on when I'm not using it. And that does two things. One, it protects the blade from, if you happen to drop it on that hard floor, it keeps the blade from getting nicked. And then also it protects you if you've got the knives just sitting on the table and you reach for something else and you knock it somewhere and it goes off and, could hit you in the leg. Had a carver was working and knocked her knife off the table and it went straight down and stuck her in the foot. So not your most usual carving injury, but it can happen. So, and then another thing that a lot of carvers don't think about, especially, folks that carve a lot, this can be a very repetitive, injury prone pursuit. And one of the things that you can do to help yourself, first off, take frequent breaks. Don't get fatigued. And then also do stretching. We had a masseuse person. She was a certified masseuse, and she showed us how to, do the stretches that help with carpal tunnel, doing this stretch and doing this one here where you get like this, where you have your hand pointing it down. And what that does is stretches out your lateral epicondyles, they're called, up here on the top of your arm. And that is really important, especially in trying to keep those types of injuries such as carpal tunnel, some arthritis, tendonitis, and ligament damage. You can develop nodes on ligaments and tendons where you won't be able to move your wrist if you aren't properly taking care of yourself and stretching. And those are, I think, are we just covering hand carving right now, Larry?
Well, we are, but you got the mic, so if you want to talk about power carving, why not?
Well, I was just thinking, we could just a few pointers. The one about the leather apron, if you're using a rotary tool or a burr or something like that, and that the leather apron helps to keep you from winding up in your shirt. And that there's two things with that. One, it's scary because all of a sudden you're winding yourself up, and two, it breaks your tool, especially if you're using, say, a Fordham with a cable attachment. It'll break that spring inside there, and you'll be having to load a new spring into your Fordham tool. So you want to pay attention to that. And then again, the other one is wood burning. The biggest one I know about wood burning is don't do it when you're tired. Wood burning when you're tired is not good because that thing's hot. And if you're droopy or your attention span's going away, go to bed. It's not worth it. It doesn't bleed much because you cauterize it right away, but go ahead and go to bed. Don't wood burn late at night. So there we are.
That's great, Scott. What you don't know about Scott is he also makes his own hats, and he also grows and carves gourds. He's a man of many talents.
And beading, I love to bead. This is a pen that I made, and it's got a nice beaded decoration on it. So.
And one day, Scott, I'll ask you, he's also a knife maker. He loves to make knives, makes 40 or 50 knives, but out of jigsaw blades, right?
Jigsaw blades, yeah.
Jigsaw blades.
Just the kind that you buy at the hardware store, comes in pairs in a little pack. They're probably about $3 for a pack of jigsaw blades. And I was looking for a steel that would work. And I thought, well, gee, jigsaws cut through wood, so why not just file the teeth off and go, stick them in a wood handle, and they work pretty well. Especially, you can make some really nice little detail knives with a long blade, and they're great for carving chains and balls and cages and things like that, because you can really reach in and get at them. So.
And Scott's a specialist in carving a bird in a cage on a swing and having a knife that does that. So Scott, maybe I'll invite you to have repeat the 1 hour presentation you did on making your own knives and making the handles. I think that would be fun. He did that for the online group of the in Morro Bay. But any questions for Scott?
I have one. This is Gary from Fremont.
Hi, Gary.
Hi, Scott. You mentioned jigsaw blades. Are we talking like scroll saw, or are we talking more like hacksaw blade size or bandsaw blade size?
Well, do you have a True Value hardware store where you're at?
Yeah.
If you go in and get the True Value all-purpose wood cutting blade, that's my standard blade. The other one too is a metal. You can get a metal cutting blade, but get the one that has fewer teeth, not the one with, umpteen teeth per inch, but a fewer but larger teeth. And those make excellent whittling knives.
Okay, thank you. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. So Gary, it's not a scroll saw. It's not a bandsaw. It's the construction jigsaw for the reciprocating blade. That's about
right. Okay, that's where I got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I thought of bandsaw blades, but you'd have to have such a big bandsaw because you can't get the width in the blade that you need. They're not stiff enough. They flex too much. And these ones, they have a little bit of flex to them, but especially the metal cutting ones, they're very stiff and they hold an edge pretty well. And I just sharpen them, I shape them and sharpen them. I don't use heat or anything on them. I use my diamond stone actually to sharpen them. I have a 2-stage diamond stone. One's 325 grit. The other one is the other side is 1200 grit. So you do the rough shaping on the 325 side, and then you sharpen it up on the 1200 side.
Larry and Scott, I want to throw a couple of things out here. I made some notes while people have been talking. So one would be, and people might want to address it or not, one of the safety things that comes up is you drop a tool. How often do we suddenly, we dropped a tool? Oh God, we go to grab it. Close our legs so we can trap it before it hits the floor. Okay. I think we've probably all done that. I don't know how you train yourself not to do it. Yeah, another one would be tool storage. I find that I often get through the whole day without cutting myself. And then when I put away my tools, I cut myself on the edge because you got all these tools in a roll or something that are all next to each other.
Well, and
I like one more thing. I like the idea of aprons. I have 2 leather aprons as well. Whether it's just psychological or not, I feel more protected when I wear it. Mine are pretty thick, so they're not paper thin. Yes, they will cut, but it feels like an extra level of protection. And the other is something that I learn and try to practice is what do you do with your arms? In other words, when I'm teaching somebody to carve, the first thing I teach them is, you don't do this kind of thing. You don't do, you're not all over. You tuck your arms in, keep them close to your body and try to keep your motions so your hands can't fly around for more than a few inches. So anyway, that's all I got to say on a couple of topics. Maybe they'll come up again.
And the leather apron will keep the knife from going between your legs and causing that reflex action there.
Yes, it does.
And and I've found there are a lot of good aprons out there. One of the cheapest aprons I've found is if you go to Harbor Freight Tools and you buy their leather welding apron. That gives you it's got a double thickness on the front because it's got a nice pocket on there. So right at the area where you're talking, where you're tucked your arms in and you're carving this way, you've got that double leather thickness there, and you can even stuff something in the pocket if you want to add to it. But they're fairly cheap and they're fairly long lasting, and you can make them any size you want. And so I have a couple of those. So
Yeah. And let me acknowledge Gary as Fremont, California. The California Carvers Guild is a big deal. There's used to be about 55, now I think about 40-ish clubs in the state. And they have a monthly publication that's got a long history called The Log. And Gary is the editor of The Log.
Oh, Gary Eves. Hi,
Right.
Gary.
Hi, Scott. And I have to say, Scott's chapter is the most prolific chapter in terms of newsletters.
You have an excellent secretary.
Any questions for either Gary or Scott? Any reactions to what they said?
I guess we didn't kick that tire hard enough.
Yeah, he'll come back. People are still thinking about it. Come back.
Well,
They-
maybe
most
next
people
time
are-
we do this, I'll have pictures.
Most people have probably already thought about this and experienced most of this stuff. So
Well, not necessarily, right? Okay, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to spotlight. For some reason, my computer just. Hang on, there we go. Okay, now we have Nancy. Nancy Gerard is someone that I don't know a lot, but we met. She's with Gerard Associates, which is a family-run supplies and teaching business. She's done a lot of teaching, teaches a lot of beginners. For those of us in the Portland area, she lives in St. Helens and made the 45-minute trek here, but she says she's used to 45-minute things. So from a beginner perspective, I think that's what I asked Nancy if she would kind of share what she does for.
Well, I am a former student of Kelly's. She taught me like 23 years ago. She probably doesn't remember me, but we've taught quite a few since then, I'm sure. But then I went and I was taught under Jeff for a while too. So Jeff Harness and both of you guys were amazing teachers and got me rolling, and I appreciate that. A craft I would never give up in my lifetime if I had, even if I had to. So I've gotten to be where I do beginning classes, and I've taught a lot of beginners. And I start with the first thing off is gloves. First thing on, last thing off. And I stress that heavily, that even before you grab anything else, put your glove on and your thumb guard on. And when you're putting your tools away, it'll be the last thing you put on, take off to put on the top of your bag at the end of the day. So, and that has kept me from cutting a lot. Next thing I go through is I start with a piece of scrap wood. I don't start them on a project right away. I give them a piece of scrap wood and one tool at a time. And I usually start with a gouge, and just to get the corners off, that kind of thing. And then I introduce them to a U gouge, a small U, and start playing around with that. And then I really stress, I do small stuff. So all my stuff is, can be held in one hand, pretty small. And so I don't want a lot of flinging with tools. So I really anchor people's hands and I make them anchor on the table. And there again, if you keep your thumbs together, somehow keep your thumbs together where they're pointing towards each other, you've got the other hand out of the way. Okay, so if you've got your thumbs together here and you're pushing, then that's fine. That you got your hand out of the way. So there again, just keeping that hand out of the way, and then it's all a matter of how it gets comfortable for them. So that's why I let them play around with the tool a little bit. Some people are more comfortable cutting towards themselves, and I stress to keep their fingers up above, and if you're going to cut towards yourself. And then I tell everybody once they start on their project to start getting the corners off. Because a lot of times people will cut themselves on the corners of the wood versus cutting themselves. All of a sudden, this carving hand that they've got the tool in, all of a sudden is bleeding, and they're just like, well, wait a minute, how'd that happen? Well, it's the wood that got them. So I try to get the wood siding off, the real sharp edge off first. So that's how I get them going. I've always got my little packet of pepper with me. I have a lot of people in the LC Stir Center that are on blood thinners. So pepper will be your joy if you get too bad of a cut and can't get it stopped with just pressure. Pour pepper on it and it'll stop it. Hurts like the devil, but it does work.
The LC Stir is a senior center in Beaverton.
Yeah, sorry. And let's see. And then I stress the small cuts. Some people just want to get in there, as you guys know. They just want to do this big, long river type of cut, that are just like flowing. And that's when you lose control. And I just to really stress the little tiny chips, keep little tiny cuts, and you can always go deeper and connect the dots, as I tell them, and you'll be able to get that flow line. Just don't try to push it in all out once in the one motion. Take breaks often. I think somebody else said that. And when I'm working on things, I'll work on a little project, say this size. Okay, then I'll work on a few minutes on that. And then I'll switch to this size. And then I've got another bigger project that I'm usually working on. So I've got 3 pieces on my table. So that way my hands will be in a different position at all times. I'm classic with if I work on something too small, my fingers just lock up after a while. They just don't want to work anymore. So I've just found that keeps me from locking up and having a little bit more joint flexibility. See, take as many lessons as you can. I always tell them every teacher will give you a little bit better idea of how you want to be as a carver. So that's about all I got.
Can you explain your Port Orford brewery and carving experience?
Port Orchard has a brewery up there called Yoked Farmhouse and Brewery. They were just starting out. They actually opened during COVID. So it was just kind of a crazy time for them to try to get things going. And they're an outside brewery type thing. So they said, well, why don't we come up and we can do classes outside in our tent outside. So that'll work. So we started doing a sip and carve, which at first I thought, this is nuts. Alcohol and carving? Wow, this is not going to go well. But sure, what the heck? Let's try it. And, it really actually went over really well. It's a really family-oriented place. Kids come around and play with the animals. And They've got play structures for the kids. I've had 8-year-olds all the way up to 75, 80-year-olds just starting to carve, and they don't mind driving from Port Orchard or Bremerton or Seattle. We've had people from Olympia all the way up to Poulsbo and Port Townsend. It really is kind of a central hub for all these people, and they don't mind driving. And so then they get a beer afterwards. So that's part of the joy. So they helped me kind of kick me off, and I kind of got them going too for bringing a few different people in. And really, it was quite a fun little marriage.
Yeah. And for those of you outside of Portland area or Washington, she just described God's country. She just described the Olympic Peninsula,
Yeah.
kind of Olympia on the bottom side to Seattle on the north side to the point of the northwest side of Olympic Peninsula. It's just
water everywhere. It's just
It's
beautiful
gorgeous.
trees, and
It's just
it's just a
gorgeous.
beautiful countryside.
And can you just show your thumb guard, which is not vet wrap, it's not leather.
This is a Kevlar finger guard that they sell now, just packets and boxes of them. They are so comfortable. And I always had a problem with the leather one falling off my thumb. Sometimes I wear both of them, depending on what I'm doing, because I found that the leather one by itself would just always be slipping off. So the leather one, the Kevlar one underneath my leather one, especially if I'm carving towards myself in the peel type of a carving, I will not, it helps not cut myself as bad. And it's like any Kevlar glove. It's not cut proof, it's cut resistant. It'll slow it down, but it won't. It'll still go through. But I tell my students, if you see blood, you better take that glove off and start seeing how bad it is. So, but actually, out of the 1.5 years I've been doing the new carving classes, I've had one person cut themselves on the edge of the wood, and then one other guy cut through with a knife. And that's another thing. When I'm teaching a beginner, I do not let them touch a straight edge knife until the very end of the work. Reason being, as I feel like a knife is kind of like scissors on a piece of fabric. Once it's there, it's there. So I let them only use it on the detail work. So you can do just as much with a V tool. If you put the V on the edges, and you can get just as sharp of a line. But if you want to move it, you can move it easier when it's not a cut into the wood deep. And a lot of beginners just don't know how to control that depth. They just go in there and just whack it in there, and you can't move it after that. So that's just another thing. And I have less cuts, I think, because of that.
Yeah.
So
So you put down the shelf lighter. Is that something you give your students?
I put this on a piece of wood, like the little, like Kelly had the little things for the table.
Yeah.
I just have little miniature ones
For their laps or for a
for the
table?
table.
For the
Mhm.
table.
Yeah.
Is it gripped underneath or on top or both?
I just have them set this on top of it.
On top of it?
I give them a new, each person gets a new piece of this to put on
Okay.
a piece of wood. But then another thing is, I stress the lighting when you're sitting down. Make sure you're comfortable chair, the height, the table, the height's right. You got your stuff around. You don't have make sure you got a closed container for your coffee or beverage or whatever. There's nothing worse than having somebody spill something and everybody jump up, and what happens with the table? The table either gets all yucky, or somebody jumps and a tool falls over in somebody else's lap. And then if you're carving outside, you got to really stress that, there's bugs out here. Do not be waving your tool in your hand at the bugs. Okay. I've had just about one person just flailing this thing because there was a bee near them. It's like, oh my God, you've got a knife in your hand. So, it's just, common sense kind of goes out the window when it comes to things that are unexpected for people. So,
Yeah.
but you can't cover it all with a newbie, but you try to cover it as much as possible and keep them as safe as possible. So
I'm going to open this to questions for a few minutes, but after that, Bob, I'm going to have you do that, start talking about what you do with power carving safety, and then Roman is going to chime in on some dust collection. But Nancy, for you, the question, how long are your beginner classes, and how long is too long for beginners to be safe, pay attention, stamina,
I
those
set
kind of
my beginning classes at 3 hours long.
3 max.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And, you know, as all of us carvers know, carving is one of those things you kind of get lost in. And about an hour into the class, I always just say, okay, let's get up and take a break. And nobody wants to, because everybody's into their stuff. And I ask them, how long do you think you've been carving? And they all guess, you know, about 15. Oh, we were only been carving about a half an hour. No, it's been an hour. And you just don't realize that it just is one of those things that you kind of get lost in. So make them take a break.
Yeah. And Kelly, what was your experience with classes? How long were your classes?
Well, the weekly classes were 3 hours. I did do beginning carving for people who had a career and couldn't, you know, come during the day. I would have an all-day carve with them and do a project.
8 hours?
Yeah.
8 hours, yeah.
8 hours.
Pretty long, but that was for experienced people that,
No, that was a beginning.
oh,
carving.
beginning,
Yeah.
oh, if
Yeah.
they had a project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask if there are any questions for Nancy.
I have a question.
Yeah, Ruth,
You said
speak
that,
up a little bit.
sorry, you said that you had people as young as 9 years old. I'm a smaller person. It's hard for me to find gloves that are small enough and the finger thing.
Kevlar makes some nice, Kevlar makes them, this brand name makes some really nice, really small gloves. Mhm.
So Ruth asked a question about finding small gloves for
Mhm.
children or smaller
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah,
So you
they
said,
make an extra small in this.
They make an
and-
extra small. Okay.
Yeah, and I like to have no finger room. That's just how I fit everybody when I have them fit. And I supply the gloves and I supply the tools and everything for my classes. So that way I know exactly that they're dealing with some sharp tools and I don't want to have any surprises.
Right. The reason why I ask is my hands are really small
Mhm.
and there's room at the end of my glove. So it's my hand sliding
Yeah.
while I'm using my tools. So I've stopped wearing them,
Mhm.
even though I should be wearing them because it doesn't feel as safe
Mhm.
yeah,
if it's not the right size.
You
Okay.
can wrap your fingers with vet wrap.
With what? Oh,
Vet-
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
I've heard people do that, but yeah, I've just found that this type of a Kevlar glove, you can find it in a extra small, so. Mhm.
when I
And
was
these-
doing a bit of
and these-
research for this program tonight, I looked around, found some YouTube videos, some articles. One guy particularly was an advocate for no gloves. He said it gives you a false sense of security,
Mhm.
was one point that he made. The other is you lose tactile feeling.
Mhm.
And the third one is you never learn to carve correctly. That in fact, you believe that you're going to be protected. So you just kind of you just kind of carve toward your thumb and anyways, I'm not into that camp, but, and I'm not advocating that, but it was interesting. And Bob, who will speak next, is a medical thing. Bob, you might make your same comment about your experience with blood draws in your medical profession.
They're comfortable.
All that. Any questions for Nancy?
I don't have a question. Sorry, this is Gary again, but on the thumb guard that you had, Nancy,
Uh-huh.
I had the same problem you did with thumb guards. They just don't hold up.
Mhm.
The thread comes apart, they rip, they start falling apart, and then they're sloppy. They fall off your thumb.
Yeah.
And so what I do now is I use I think that tape you talked about, the
Vet wrap.
green tape. It sticks to itself. They use it for medical purposes.
Right.
I use that tape and I'll wrap about 4 layers around that thumb guard while it's on my thumb. And it's like putting a cast on there. It won't change shape.
Yeah.
And what's nice is I find my gloves and thumb guards, they get dirty too. And then pretty soon you're getting dirty stuff all over your carving.
Yeah.
So on the thumb guards, when they start wearing out or getting dirty, I just cut them off and I put a new layer on. But I'm not going through thumb guards like I was.
Mhm.
I'd be buying them by a dozen of them. And my God, I'd be in a couple of months, they're all just ripped apart. So
So
don't have a
Gary,
problem any.
that's
Yes.
what I do. That's cling guard, that cling wrap, I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Cut the fingers and thumbs out of old leather gardener's gloves. And I keep those and I wrap it with cling tape. And that gives me a great fit. I mean, it's perfect.
Mhm.
I can almost feel through the thumb, but it still protects me. Cling wrap it's amazing. You can do some funny things to it with knives and it won't cut.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Anyway, yes,
Is cling wrap different than vet wrap?
Mhm.
it's medical. I think it's just any medical tape. This happens to be green, but it's any
Mhm.
medical tape that
Yeah.
clings to itself. It's the same stuff you can buy in a drugstore. They put on your wounds in a hospital if you have to go in for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with my thumb on my glove hand too, because I use my thumb a whole lot and I replace that cling wrap about every 2 months, I guess, because I just eat it up. I do a lot of push cuts and I use that thumb.
If anybody has a source to put in the chat, let me know. One of our students, members is a doctor. He knows about Coban. And my experience with the vet wrap I buy on Amazon is really thin. And it really takes a lot of wraps in order to do it. And I just don't, I mean, I use it, but it's not, I wouldn't call it sturdy
Mhm.
kind of thing. Some of us know Yvonne Bailey, who is a member of Scott's Club. She lives in Southern California. And she ran across the idea of putting a penny or a dime inside your thumb that basically gives you a little physical barrier. If you're ending up carving against that a lot, then that little dime, it fitting in there would stop it.
I just like the feel of these Kevlar ones just because they're so comfortable and they breathe.
Yeah.
And I just don't like I don't like putting my hand in any of the plasticky type
Yeah.
gloves because I feel like I'm sweating, and this one's so comfortable. I only end up going to the grocery store afterwards and going, oh geez, I've got a thumb guard on. Still, you know.
Yeah, the ones I saw on Amazon, you sell them, so you have some experience. They seem to be pretty inexpensive, but
Yeah.
the gross,
Yeah.
throw them away, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't take
Yeah.
long.
Oh, I wash them. I put
you
them
wash
in the
them?
wash machine, and just like these Kevlar gloves, I just wash them.
They
when
work.
get a little dirty.
That's good to know. Okay. I'm gonna switch gears to Bob and then Roman and then Terry, I'm gonna have, you'll be third in terms of your show and tell for your chainsaw equipment for a whole different dimension of that. So Bob, why don't you just briefly describe the kind of carving that you do, just so you know the context. Oh, you're muted, Bob.
Hi.
There we go.
I primarily do decorative bird carving and have done that for about 25 years. And most of my tools are rotary tools. I am not very accustomed with a knife, so some of this that I've learned tonight kind of tells me that I went in the right direction, because it sounds like what you're doing is a lot more dangerous. My tools primarily are a micromotor, which is in my case an NSK, but Dremel, Ram, they all have their varieties, and they're very high speed, anywhere from 25 to 35,000 RPM. And the types of dangers that I have experienced is a little different than what you're talking about. The cuts aren't as bad. It's primarily the dust that's the culprit in my frame of reference. I also use a Fordham. Occasionally I'll use an angle grinder to rough out a bird, and very rarely a chainsaw. Eye protection, I use just glasses, but a lot of people use goggles. And the advantage of the goggles with a lot of dust in the environment is if you've got dry eyes, the dust is a significant irritant. So wearing goggles that are fitting down over your face is probably a better choice, or a face shield. A face shield is maybe a little overkill, you know, like what wood turners use. And then in terms of, yeah, you have to have good lighting. But the lungs are the primary thing that I'm trying to protect when I go in there. And there's a lot of different ways of approaching this. One is one of these helmets that go over your head that take ventilation from behind your head, blow it across your face, and then get rid of the dust that way. I do it a little bit different because I hate the face mask, and I'm going to see if I can share. How do I do this?
You
I've
should
done
be
this
able,
before.
bottom center says share screen in green.
There we go.
There you go.
This is one of the tools that I use on bigger pieces. It's like a lamp slot, the right angle grinder that has an adapter on it. But let's move on. What I normally do is I have a little clip-on fan that I blow across my lap. That takes the fine dust out of there totally. And then downwind from that, and this was Joe Jedrzejkowski came up with this idea or found it someplace. It's just a window fan that's about 20 by 20 and a filter that goes over the intake aspect of the fan. And it's very effective in terms of getting rid of small particulate matter, particularly if you use a HEPA filter. And then I've got also an ambient filter that basically washes the entire room. Let's see, I've got a technical issue here in that the thing I'm supposed to be tapping is right behind the stop share thing. There we go. These are primarily the types of tools I use: die grinders, things that are called cutsaws or saber tooths that have little jagged points on them, rasps, and then these finer pieces. And what I don't have here are the diamond bits, which are just diamond dust on a little cone. And with these, you can probably get a good size abrasion, but you're not going to cut your finger off with them. And back to the other thing that everybody was emphasizing, I use a leather apron. And I've never, I've hit it a couple of times, but never gone through it or anything. I think knives are more effective than that is. Wearing sturdy shoes because tools come off the table. And the other thing that somebody has brought up before is these things catch on pieces of clothing, hair, or whatever. So you want to do away with the loose clothing, do away with the long hair. If you've got long hair, tie it up. The other thing too that nobody's mentioned is the choice of wood. I use primarily Tupelo, which is a little better than basswood when it comes to rotary carving because it doesn't tend to fuzz up. Basswood tends to fuzz when you use the rotary tool on it. But there's all kinds of other woods that people use, some of which are pretty dangerous. Anything that's got a resin in it, if you can smell it, it's getting, you've got a resin there. The rosewoods are horrible. Getting just a little bit of that dust in your lungs can be quite an irritant. There's another wood that's being sold here locally that 20 years ago they wouldn't have been, and that's Jelutong. It's something like basswood. The problem is it's imported from Southeast Asia and primarily Vietnam. And during the Vietnam War, these trees were sprayed with Agent Orange and have become incorporated in the trees. And this is fine particulate matter, is nasty stuff. You don't want to get in touch with it. But the thing that I don't know is whether they've all of these bad trees, so to speak, have been harvested, and what we're dealing with now are new growth. I don't know, but I would personally would stay away from it. One thing that in my this is a burr that I didn't put in properly in the collet. It didn't go in far enough, or I had the wrong collet, or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what happened. But when a piece like this, which is I think that's 3/32, the shaft, when you put pressure on it or you bend it and it goes out of round, all of a sudden you've got something that's going 30,000 RPM and doing this, and it is crazy. I keep this around kind of as a joke because I'll kind of leave it around, and when somebody asks what it is, I say this is a burr that I use for getting around corners. Let's see. Oh, this is another thing that that probably wouldn't apply for a lot of you, but if you're using a burr and you're coming to a piece of wood, to the end of a piece of wood, you've got to approach it either from this direction as arrows or this direction. If you approach it this way, what happens is with the rotation of the burr, it catches on the end and drives it downward. You're already putting pressure on it from the top. Those burrs catch that corner and go into your knee. So as a right-hander, if you always come to the edge and go toward yourself, you're safe. If you go away from yourself, it could flip around. And the last slide I have is one that I'm not even sure I should show you. It's a, I'm going to, but it's something like this guy has done absolutely everything wrong. He was an instructor that I went to up in Maryland. At the time, he was, I think, 24, was at the top of his field in terms of world-class carver. And as a 24-year-old, nothing could hurt him. You know, he was impervious to any problem. So we had been working, there were 3 of us, we had been working for 3 or 4 days and roughed out our bird body. And he came in and looked at us and he says, now I'll show you how to do it. And he did the whole thing that we did in 3 days in about 20 minutes. But this is how he did it. That's an angle grinder on a cement floor with the piece being held under his foot. And if he wasn't nearsighted, he wouldn't even be wearing glasses probably, but absolutely crazy. He lived on the edge in everything he did, ended up dying in a motorcycle accident. But just to emphasize, this is not how you do it. One more, I just wanted to show you the kind of work I do. That's a wood carving, with the exception of the legs are made out of brass and a little plastic. And the cattail is made out of a piece of wood that's been turned in the round, sprayed with lacquer, covered with sawdust, blown off, and then done that several times until it gives you a fuzzy look.
Wow, that's beautiful.
But that's pretty much what I have. The other things people have gone over several times, so there's no need to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Let me just two-part B with Roman. Let me just take the spotlight off of. We have a Monday morning carving conversations group, and Bob is a regular as Roman in San Jose, and it's amazing. So anybody wants to join the carving conversation between 9 and 10 every Monday morning, and Ruth is on that. So we keep some notes, but Roman, Roman raised dust collection issues, and he studied this a lot. So I thought I'd ask him to share his perspective. Okay, Roman.
Hello, my name is Roman Chernikov. I'm actively carving for 8 years now, and I like whittling, but also do chip carving, turning, and sometimes I use power tools. I would like to talk about air quality, and obviously it affects the lungs and health, and we need to be very careful and aware what environment is around us. And air quality can be monitored for different things. For example, gas like carbon monoxide. That is just a regular smoke detector with carbon monoxide sensor. If it goes too high, it will beep. But it doesn't show how much carbon monoxide or other gases is there. There are other sensors available that may show more different things about the air quality. But I would like to, and these are just another examples, radon gas detector, carbon monoxide, but more professional one. But I would like to show and talk about particular matter. When you look on the website, for example, here's a weather website on iPhone. If you scroll a little bit, you may see air quality outside. So this PM 2.5 is actually particular matter, 2.5 micrometers. Why 2.5? That is the size of the particles, and the size is small enough to breach the border in the lungs. So those particles can be absorbed through the lungs into the bloodstream. That's why the particle sizes 2.5 micrometers and less than that are very dangerous, and most applications online or weather website monitor these type of air particles. It could be pollen, it could be smoke, it could be any other pollution with those particles. So it's important to be aware if you have clean air inside your house or outside before ventilating the house or before going for a walk or doing outside activities. So it's important to quantify how clean your air is. And those sensors will help to do that. This is an example of particular matter sensor. Inside there is a laser and a little motor with ventilator. So the laser highlights these particles in the air and estimates how many of those particles are in a chamber inside. So it shows how clean your air is. I bought it on Amazon. It's about $120, and it's battery operated. You can keep it near your workbench if you do sanding, or you can put it outside for a couple of minutes, it will show. So keep in mind, air pollution happens not because of sanding only. It could happen because there is a factory nearby, or there is a road, a highway, and the wind blows, like fire smoke and things like that. I have more details about that on my website, readandtry.com. I will post that in a minute. I will post the URL to the website in a minute to the chat. Feel free to reach out, ask any questions, and please use masks, respirators when you do sanding and other, if possible.
Thank you.
And Roman, what clubs do you participate in that area with?
I belong to several different clubs. Santa Clara Valley Carvers, Tri Valley Carvers, Capital Wood Carvers.
It's just
You
Sacramento.
know,
Yeah.
it's just the carving community. I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah. And you have a day job as a technologist.
I'm a software engineer, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Roman or Bob at all? Don't be shy.
Thank you.
Scott,
I did have a question, but darn it, I forgot it.
it'll come back. It'll come back. Let me ask, Bob, you made a comment to me, but Bob is a doctor medical background. So you mentioned about the rubber gloves.
Oh, that was more on, I'm not sure what the scientific basis is, but I've drawn a number of bloods over time. And there's the older set, my age, that is not used to drawing with gloves. And the primary reason gloves were started was because of HIV, back whenever that started. And everybody was afraid of it. But as time went on, the only time you're going to really get infected is if you stick yourself. The gloves don't help you prevent the sticking, and they give you sort of a false sense of security. Plus, your hands are a little bit, you lose the tactile nature of the whole process. So this is not a scientific study, and maybe there's been studies that have already disproved what I'm saying, but I just another thing to think about.
Yeah, but your point at one point was that they, in fact, you lose sensitivity by wearing the gloves, right?
Right.
And okay. Roman did put his website, readandtry, readntry.com. And Nancy Bill Tainter asked the question of, does Nancy sell carving supplies and equipment online?
I have some knives that I carry, a flex cut. I'm getting a new set of knives shortly called Focuser Carving. Focuser Carving. They're made in China. They've reached out. They're trying to get going in the United States, and so I thought I'd give them a try. So I'll have those shortly. I do wood blanks, kind of like my cat, like I've got here. And I do a picture of the cat and have it all in the cat, all in a little bag and a package with the little whiskers. And my daughter's got me all set up to where she's got me all looking like a little store. And so I've got some of those things on my website, and that's GerardAccessories.com. So
GerardAccessories.com.
Yep.
One word.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got
Okay.
about 44 patterns out now. The reason I started getting into the cutouts is I ended up just kind of having patterns falling in my lap. Tina Tony got out of it, and I said, well, let's keep your patterns going. I'll sell the wood and I'll sell your pattern with it. And she goes, no, I don't want to deal with it anymore. Just if you have a blank of mine that you can give them one of my patterns. So I've got that. And then I ended up with Will and Kay Hayden's patterns and Dave Disselbrett's patterns and Kay McBride's patterns. So it's just, I've got a wealth of patterns to go far, and I could have a whole 3 or 4 tables at a place, but I'm just kind of picking and choosing and seeing what goes and see what people want. And
Yeah.
we're losing our suppliers up here like crazy. So just to have somebody keep supplying some wood, and then I do basswood and butternut also.
Okay.
But those aren't online, but you can always let me know what you need and I can get it for you.
Tom Rich made a point. Tom worked with Rick Giusa, who was this traveling Scottish carver, and did a class at True North Studio for those of you in Portland living on the east side, northeast side. And Tom is leading the effort to try to put together a group that will meet there at True North to have a carving presence that I think will be just a great resource. And I think the more we can get lots of multiple groups around, not just at senior centers, the better off we're going to be as a community, kind of a thing. And I'd like to acknowledge Roman too. During one of the Monday conversations on these safety, pointed out how he and his I guess clubs focus on using the knife safely by carving away from your thumb, not carving into your thumb. So teaching that technique, right, becomes a really important piece of this whole safety equation.
I would like to add a few words about chip carving. Chip carving is very safe, and you don't need to use gloves. And see, that is a stroke decorated with chip carving. The knife that I use for chip carving looks like that. It's very safe to use it, and because you push the knife into the wood and there is no anything behind, So just please consider. And what Larry mentioned about not cutting your thumb. I used to use thumb guard when I whittle, and I cut it multiple times, and I even nick my thumb a few times. And then I read about the proper technique. Oh, it should not be like that. It should not be, it should be like that. So when I cut, I always miss a knife. I never put my thumb on the line with the blade when I do whittling. And that's how I don't need a thumb guard anymore. It took me a couple of months to train myself for doing that, but after that, it's not a problem anymore for me. But please consider doing chip carving. It's very safe, and the results can be very nice,
Yeah, and Roman's got some great patterns on his website also, some articles and papers.
Great.
That's terrific. Let's switch gears. We're not going to talk about adzes and axes and crooked knives today, which is a whole nother kind of thing. But Terry, I'm going to spotlight you, and you can maybe do a bit about your Mongo stuff. You're still muted. Shake your head if you want more time. It was there a minute ago.
Larry,
Yeah.
There we go.
Gary here. Did you see Tim
I'm
Crawford?
done. I got it. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm wondering if Tim wants to go to bed.
Yeah.
Oh, he, the rule is that everybody with the blank screen, you don't know whether they're sleeping or snoring. I love Zoom. I love Zoom.
He did send a message to you, so
Okay, that he wants to go to bed.
no.
Okay,
But
he wants to.
go ahead and read it. I'm reading
Tim, did
between
you
the
want to say
lines.
something? I'll be
Oh,
happy to
Tim, I'm
yield the floor.
sorry. Oh,
as long as
Tim
you-
wanted to
you
make a
two-
comment. Yeah, Tim, for sure. Let's, Terry, hang on just a minute.
You bet.
Tim, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
There, I'm not unmuted. You know, one thing when I teach beginning carving, and I got into a few years ago teaching the homeschool people through one of the local hardwares. They provided stuff. And, you know, Nancy had talked about in regards to a lot of times I start people off with a skew and see if I can accent my hands versus I guess I have to put it down even lower. You know, I teach that you need to have both hands on the carving and both hands on the tool. So when you're literally going through the carving, you're pushing with your thumb. I also just encourage them to wear any glove. And if the fingertips are too long, believe it or not, we cut them off. I'm not as worried about their fingertips as I am their hands, and that way they get a good touch. But even with a gouge, I guess you can't see this, I should have had a camera. But there again, this is just a regular blade, and when you're pushing through it, I keep the thumb on the tool and my hands on the tool. The same way with a knife. You're going to keep that knife and keep your thumb in pivot. And think of cutting a turkey. You push and slice at the same time as you're going through it. And here I'm putting wood chips in the dining room versus in the basement. But, the wife's in bed, so she'll see him in the morning. But those are a couple techniques that I use on teaching, in particular beginners. And unfortunately, when you're teaching people at a school level, whether it's a high school or junior high level, I always say half the classes are very intent and want to carve and want to learn, and the other ones, they're sitting through the class waiting for you to sign their paper so they can go home. So I don't know if anybody gets into that homeschool type of group for an art situation, but it's quite interesting. And many of those kids have extremely good talent. It just hasn't been tapped and that type of thing. So.
Jim, I think I ran across a YouTube video with your voice on it, demonstrating tools. Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
And I always tell people, if you want to know how to carve a boot and you got 20 minutes of wasted time, you can go on YouTube and type in carving a boot. And I got all dressed up and got a haircut and everything. And when I went to the filming, I should have had a manicure because all I filmed was my hands.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
If you blank your camera, we'll know what that means. We won't take it personally. Terry will switch now. We'll switch.
Okay. So, and I think you can hear me now,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, we're
Great.
fine.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so I'm gonna just talk quickly about big protective equipment. And I'm gonna have to switch to this little camera.
Terry, by the way, is our webmaster on the board of directors for the Carving Guild, lives
okay.
in Northeast.
Oh, there's something. I just carved that as a blade cover.
Cover, that's cute.
I was gonna put a little article in our newspaper next time. Not that everybody doesn't know how to do that. I just really enjoyed it. I did that on vacation in Yosemite recently. Sorry, but that's not what I wanted to show you. That was the wrong camera.
It's funny.
Yeah, here we go. Here's the right camera. I do have a dust collector, by the way, up in the corner of my shop. But when I'm doing work that that I want to talk about now, and that's using either an angle grinder with a pretty aggressive kind of disc on it. That could either be an arbor with a chainsaw wrapped around it, or it could be a wheel with from Arbor Tech, say, with cutting surfaces around the edge of the wheel. But at any rate, those are pretty heavy tools, and I use some protection that I wouldn't normally do in the shop. This is really the kind of stuff, I guess, that well, a real lumberjack wouldn't use any of this stuff, but I'm not a real lumberjack. So I do have a hard hat. It has helped occasionally. It has a visor in the front with a screen over it and earmuffs attached to the side. Okay? So from that, I can get protection from large things and the sound. And I want to stress that as I get older, and this started years and years ago, decades ago, my ears, my hearing is worse and worse. So I really need to wear ear protection, and I do regularly. So that protects the face and the head pretty well from flying objects, but not dust. And when you're using a big tool like a chainsaw to cut old wood, you're going to get some nasty stuff in the air, and not just chips, but particles. So I use that sort of mask. I think I got this one at Harbor Freight. As a matter of fact, it has replaceable filters, and that helped quite a bit. Sometimes when I don't think the particulate matter is so terrible, I cut sometimes some really old stuff with a lot of mildew. But when I don't have old nasty wood like that, I'll use a lighter face mask. And I got this face mask years ago, and it's washable, and it works extremely well, I've found. Occasionally I'll just use these if I use that mask. Over here on the floor, oh, that guy on the floor is about 30 inches by 12 inches diameter, a log. And that's the kind of thing I would use some heavy stuff on to get big wood off, rough out, if you will. So I'd use a chainsaw on that and then go down and use smaller and smaller tools until I finished it. But he started out with a chainsaw and some of those angle grinder tools. That was an old log that was from a tree that had been pushed down in one of the Florida hurricanes, probably 15 years ago, and been on the ground for a while. I brought him with me, one of the few carvings I brought with me. And I use those, if you like Westerns, those should look familiar. Those are chaps, just like the cowboys would wear. And that's not gonna keep a chainsaw from dismembering you if it were in a horror movie and the chainsaw swinging murderer came after you. But it will touch that first, and hopefully you'll get your finger off the trigger before it goes through the material. It's Kevlar on the back, and it's pretty tough stuff. I also wear, draped across the top of that, is a leather apron that I wear underneath that. And those two gloves are gauntlets that provide pretty good hand protection, but I've found with chainsaw work, your hands normally, unless you get hit by something, that's the biggest problem, flying material, your hands are normally not out there in front of the chainsaw itself. That's always in front of your hands, or should be anyway. So that's the kind of stuff I wear to do heavy kind of cutting, big cutting. But I'll still wear those earmuffs and that mask when I'm cutting inside, even if I have the air filter going and a fan going and the door open, when I'm using a bandsaw, say, and cutting blanks, because they'll put a bunch of really fine particles in the air and they'll stay in the air for a while, regardless of what kind of protective air filtering equipment you might be running. So anyway, I wear that the whole time that I'm doing that kind of work. So that's about it, Larry. That's my protective kit for working with rough stuff.
And Terry also teaches flat plane carving and carving wood spirits and all kinds of stuff. He's got a flat plane carving class coming up that filled up. So it'll be at Woodcrafts. And hopefully that'll be a continuing kind of thing. Any questions for Terry? Anybody else do heavy duty Mongo chainsaw, Arbor Tech, angle grinder?
I've done some of that work, and yeah, the chips go everywhere. I also have to put on a pair of coveralls and snap the snap around my neck because you find chips going down your back. And
Yep.
and
I've got an old Air Force jumpsuit in the corner that I put on when I do that kind of work too.
and,
Because you get trash everywhere. You
and
still do, but it's just you get a little less trash when you suit up.
yeah. And when I was a ranger, we used chainsaw chaps quite a bit, and only had one incident where somebody got the chain up against their leg, and what it did, it was the chainsaw chap actually jammed up into the saw and stopped it. So that was good.
Yeah.
It overcame the clutch and was able to stop the chain from. He only got superficial cuts on his leg, but the other thing about those chainsaw chaps we found out was that one touch and you better go buy a new pair of chainsaw chaps.
They're
only
one
good
use.
for one action. So it's kind of like bulletproof vest. If your bulletproof vest gets shot, you get to throw it away and get a new bulletproof vest. So anyway.
So Scott, I don't want to go down this path much, but I'll just use mildew as an example of in the gourd carving danger zone. Most of us are wood carvers, but we purposely called our club not Oregon wood carvers. We call them Oregon carvers, because people can carve a lot of other things. And the aspiration is over time, there'll be a lot of other things, including food and ice and gourds and linoleum. But would you make a comment, Scott, about the dangers of working with gourds?
Oh, certainly. The biggest danger working with gourds is you're going to be using power equipment, a lot of times a rotary burr or cutting burrs and things like that, things that atomize the gourd particles. And the thing about gourds is you grow the gourd, and then the gourd hangs out there in the weather and the wind and rain and dries up, and then it molds up and gets mold inside and mold throughout. And so they look pretty nasty before you start working on them. You have to clean them. And that involves, scrubbing with pot scrubbers and water and things like that. but even after that, they look pretty clean. They look like they're nice and everything. But inside, there's a lot of spores from the bacteria and the mold and the fungus that have infected that gourd. And so you must wear, at least an N95 protective mask when you're working with gourds, because you can get those fungal spores and bacterial spores in your lungs and end up with what they call gourd fever, which is basically you could end up, getting some pretty nasty diseases, including COPD from working on gourds without a mask. And that includes if you're burning on the gourd too. You don't want to burn on a gourd without wearing a mask as well. So.
And I raise this with you, Scott, as a gourd example, but I think some people love found wood. Found wood that's going to be maybe moldy, and spalted wood is going to have all kinds of interesting potential. So we can't just take it for granted that the stuff that's entering our lungs are fine particles. There's a whole other conversation about that. But we're going to run out of time in a minute. I want to come back to work holding. There's a whole potential opportunity to talk about safe work holding kind of things. And Jerry found and then created I thought a very clever thing. And I realized someone told me my slides weren't sequencing. That's my problem. Can you see that picture of a workmate? So I'm just going to leave it there and not try to do much more. But Jerry, do you want to just verbally explain what you did and what this is?
Yeah, I do an awful lot of relief carving, and I found there was some discussion early on about trying to take care of your muscles and arthritis and things like that. And I found that when I had it flat on the bench, that I could only go just a couple of hours, and I just ached everywhere. And so I got this idea to come up with a way that I could go and tilt my work up, make it more accessible, and I didn't have to lean over so much. So I bought this old workmate at a garage sale for like $20, cut the legs off of it. It's easy enough to do. They're just in there with some sort of a steel rivet. You drill them out, and ended up with just this platform, and modified it so that you can see there it's at about a 45-degree angle. The piece that comes back toward the window, that piece is hinged on the top, and by putting more pieces of wood up against that one, you can move the base of that forward and give the workmate more of an angle. You can go up all the way up to almost 90 degrees. The beauty of the workmate, of course, is that because those two pieces of wood slide back and forth, you can put the bench dogs on there, and can accommodate just about anything you want to put in there. I found that it allows me to work much longer, and I just don't end up with the strain that I would have had, let's see, a year ago.
Yeah, awesome. That's great.
And the whole thing cost me, I said it was about $20 at a yard sale, and I had some scrap plywood laying around. So it's maybe not a beautiful piece, but it sure works well.
Kelly showed a classic bench hook. The bench hook on the left is the one that Max Sutter used about 50 years ago. It was a variation of that, but it had a cleat on the left side as well with two notches. He used these 5x7 typical boards, and that allowed him to rotate either at 90 degrees or 45 degrees. The one on the right is my current favorite that I use, and it came out of, I think, a French book on woodblock carving. The advantage with using dowels as pins is you have a lot more variations of being able to space it. I only use it with left and top rows because I'm right-handed, I'm carving to the left. But it can be, if you're ambidextrous, you can leave out the left row, etc. And so that, and I'm just acknowledging Max Sutter, but there's also in the, over the last 18 months or so, I would say 7 of the students that have gone through the Max Sutter relief carving class have come up with their own variations of work holding devices that work for them. They're always easy, they're always straightforward, but they're clever, and clever in the sense of what Jerry was talking about as well. And the last one, Jerry, this is a little harder to see. Just want to comment on this tool storage system that you have. This is in the spirit of, I think most of our experiences are we get cut picking up or putting away tools, not necessarily carving.
Exactly. And I can't take any credit for this. I ended up being able to buy pretty much that entire selection of tools in the springtime. The gentleman who built that rack passed away, and his wife sold it. But the beauty of it is that, you know, everything is there. You're not putting things back in a tool roll, you know, with the blade sticking out towards you. And I found, you know, as Larry mentioned, that, you know, carving and clutter, this thing sits just to my left, to where I carve. And I find that, you know, what I end up doing is I pick up the tool that I need, I use it, and I turn around and I put it back. And I've never done that before. I just don't put tools back. So
I
it's,
can vouch for that.
Who said that?
I have no idea. So yeah, I mean, that works really well. Larry, did you don't have the picture of that other storage thing that I sent you?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
You want to verbalize it?
Well, because I carve in a group an awful lot, and you know, for the first 10 years I always had, you know, carving rolls which take up an awful lot of room on a workbench. And what I developed last year is I went to Woodcraft, and for about $20 or so, they have it's like a 6-drawer sandpaper safe, they call it. And I determined that I could lay the tools in that sandpaper safe. So rather than having the tools all horizontal spread out, what I've got are basically 6 drawers that go vertically, all contained in about a 1-by-1 footprint on the table. When I opened up the plastic drawers, I put a couple ceramic magnets down there, and in that 1 foot by 1 foot by 6 drawers, I can carry probably close to 50 tools in it.
Jerry, I don't remember that picture. Sorry, that's why I didn't include it, but I will find it. And after every program I send out, once the video is available, I'll tell you that it's available, and any handouts or links or whatever will get put in those notes in minutes. So I'll include that as a reference, and I'll include a copy of the PowerPoint slides that I used that I didn't show, and I'll include Tom Rich's True North Studio reference, and I'll include a link to Tim's FlexCut safe cutting kind of thing. Let me just see. Sharon Miller, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'll just acknowledge that if you have anything that you would like to comment on. Sharon and I met by accident at the Columbia Flyway show in Astoria. We sat next to each other. I never knew there was a carving group in Madras, and she is it, along with her friend. So if you can wave your hands, Sharon, I will. And you have all, I won't put you on the spot. No, that's a terrible thing for me to do. Are there any, yeah, don't do that. Please don't do that. As I said, we're amongst friends. Anybody, questions, comments? want to go to bed, have a glass of wine. Anyway, thank you all for being part of our emerging group. Thank you for Nancy and Kelly for driving over and doing that, and for I'm particularly honored to have Kelly re-engaging with us in some ways, and trying not to overdo that relationship. But Kelly was the godmother for the gathering of the guild show last spring, and so that was a huge venture. And we'll have that going on again at the end of April for 3 days. I won't mention Ruth, who also was the show manager, I'm sure she would just love to get involved again. But we want to expand the store. We had a 10 by 30 booth last time. I would like to see another one 10 by 30 dedicated for being able to, for carvers who want to sell their things, to be effective in a huge marketplace. And then to have a 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 dedicated demonstration area across the aisle. And this was Kelly's debrief idea that I think really makes a lot of sense, that we can really get a lot of traction. We're exploring just again, based on Roman's contribution in the morning conversations about what Tri-Valley carvers do. They have some CNC'd bird feather blanks out of basswood that are then wood burned as a participatory hands-on experience at shows. And wood burning being relatively safe is usually simpler than having knives in the hands of people. So we're going to experiment with that. The Tri-Valley guy that created that pattern is working with Roger Crooks in our group, and we'll CNC some of those and get some blanks. We'll try that out. We keep looking for effective hands-on demos, user participation. If other than soap carving, they're the only ones that we've been able to kind of get our hands around. Okay, anybody else? Comments? Stop talking so we can go home. Okay. Scott, thank you for joining us. Tim,
Oh.
Thank you for sticking with us. Tom, do you have? No? Okay. Okay, we'll sign off. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
guys.
Yeah, so- Sorry.